Statistics South Africa is due to release its unemployment figures today, derived from a household-based survey that includes informal, agricultural and domestic workers. The figures come after South Africa saw a record high of 32.6% unemployment in the first quarter, and there are expectations for a further deterioration. This after the country has not been able to generate enough employment opportunities for an ever-expanding labour force. Let's get you some perspective on the story now. Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, joins us now via our video link. Matthew, it's great to have you with us on the show this morning, but it's going to be on a depressing subject because all analysts and all the numbers point us to those numbers increasing even further.
Yes, sadly they will be right. And look, we will take as Cosatu the expanded definition of unemployment, which is in the 40% of people who actually give it up looking for work, but would love a chance to earn a living to take care of their family. We expect the stats to be much worse because we've been in a heightened lockdown. We've had a third wave, which has really hit a lot of companies, from tourism to hospitality to restaurants to liquor, entertainment, sports, etc. And of course, we've had the destruction, the political vandalism, the looting of KZN and Gauteng. You know, 50% of our economy is based on these two provinces, so we expect it to be much worse. I think equally we do feel as Cosatu the government has not moved with enough speed to honour its commitments under the Job Summit, under the Economic Recovery Plan. There is some green shoots, but on a macro scale, not enough has been done by government to honour those commitments. We also haven't seen enough relief been given to companies to help them reopen, to help save jobs, to help stimulate the economy to grow.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, we have this conversation every time we see the release of our employment numbers. It is different now. As you say, there are new factors that are coming into the discussion around our staggering unemployment numbers. You talk about the looting and the violence in parts of KZN and Gauteng. It's some of the new issues around COVID-19 as well. But how do we move the dial in how we begin to understand what it means to create jobs in our country?
Sure. I mean, look, we've got many challenges facing us all at once. We can't afford to complain to lament and simply give up on it because it's too tough. We have to knuckle down and deal with the issues. But it does require government to show much more efficiency, much more speed in dealing with the issues. We have to fix Transnet. You know, it's simply, if Transnet doesn't work, we can't get our agricultural, manufacturing, or motor manufacturing exports to the destinations, whether it's in South African markets or it's overseas. If the ports don't work, we can't get these goods out to the destinations. That means that jobs in the motor manufacturing industry, it means jobs in the mining industry are threatened, that revenue that could have been earned to save jobs, to create jobs, is lost. One of the reasons why government was able to increase social relief measures during this past few months was because of the commodities boom.
Yeah.
We could have done much better if the ports were functioning properly. So government has to tackle all these issues. They have to fix metro rail so workers can get to work on time. They've got to fix Eskom so industry has got electricity to work all the time. But unfortunately, government doesn't move with speed on many issues. Equally, we would have wanted to see much more support from the banks to say what can they do to help stimulate the economy, to help companies and consumers who are really distressed and battling, to enable them to survive and to kickstart the economy.
I mean, Matthew, these are a lot of big points that you're sort of pointing towards. Fix Metro Rail, fix Eskom, just some of those important measures that we've been talking about again for months and months.
Sure, some of these issues, to be honest, have been neglected for years. I don't think it's a fallacy to say that we had a lost decade where we allowed our state-owned enterprises to be looted, to be mismanaged to the point of destruction. We've got to clean it up. Those are hard things, but they can be done. I think there is some initial green shoots we've seen in Eskom where they've begun to tackle corruption, laying civil claims for people who have looted with billions of rands. They've managed to recover some of that. I think we've also seen the Eskom front that the debt burden has decreased from almost 500 billion rand to under 400 billion rand. Those are positive things. Much more needs to be done. One of the key pillars of the Economic Recovery Plan is to buy local. And that means all of us, from consumers to trade unions, to businesses, to bargaining councils, to the SOEs, to government, to big companies, need to buy locally produced goods. So instead of buying clothes from China, buying food from wherever overseas, buy locally produced goods. Because that will help save jobs. It actually helps also to create jobs. So those are the things that we should do, but it means all of us have got to put shoulder to wheel. It means government and business have to do much more in showing leadership.
And I mean, it's a long-term project. As you say, the recovery is happening by increments insofar as our SOEs and various other sectors are concerned. And so what's likely to happen is we're going to see, hopefully not, but certainly all of the numbers point in that direction. We're going to see an increase in our jobs numbers for some time to come before we start to see a recovery.
Yes, sadly we will, because we just simply have too many people in government business who don't believe it is their job to save jobs, to grow the economy. We seem to have an armchair, lethargic approach to do this. We're in our deepest recession in 100 years. Unemployment has pushed past 40%. Those who are likely to have jobs have experienced wage cuts, wage freezes, even in the public service. The pressure even on those is huge, but there are ways to get things moving. So, for example, as Cosatu, we helped with the other unions and NEDLAC to push through over 65 billion rand worth of relief from the UF to come into the economy over this past 18 months. That's benefited 5.5 million workers. It's helped to save many millions of jobs. Equally, if government can show similar commitment, if business can show similar commitment, we can help to stave off measures. The economic disaster relief package for the violence in KZN and Gauteng, the 12-point plan, largely based on Cosatu's proposals, it can help provide about 50 billion rand worth of relief to these two provinces. But we need to see government moving much faster on it. You know, it's more than a month down the road, and the SASSA payments, the 350 grant, hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
Applications have been made, but not one rand has gone through. The UF relief for KZN and Gauteng, applications are starting tomorrow, a month and a half later. So those are the kind of delays in governments that really just threatened local jobs. It means workers sit at home with no money to take care of the family. It means no money is being spent in the economy. So if government can move with greater speed, if the banks can get off the fence and provide actual solidarity to the economy, we can fix the situation.
Yeah, and it's not all down to COVID-19, is it? These unemployment numbers in many ways also reflect, what's being called government's misguided austerity strategy geared towards containing public debt to reducing budget deficits instead of increasing production capacity?
Sure. Look, I think we do appreciate that we can't print money, that we can't have a debt which is out of control.
Yeah.
But I think government is doing the wrong approach. So basically taking the patient off medication out of the ICU when the patient is hanging on for dear life. What we need to do right now is to stimulate the economy, to save jobs, to create jobs, to give support to industries to make sure they can remain open and don't retrench, etc. Government itself has got funds. It needs to manage those funds properly. We waste billions of rands on wasteful expenditure, on corruption, on the mismanagement of SOEs. If government can clean up that, there's enough money. If government can further capacitate the South African Revenue Service to tackle the billions lost to tax evasion, to customs fraud, there's enough money. If we can reprioritize away from some of the frivolous projects, flying MPs overseas, subsidizing grandiose lifestyles of ministers, the bloated top management of some of the SOEs, there is enough money to do it. It just requires government to get its act in order, and to work with the private sector, with business, with unions as well. But again, it comes down to leadership, and too often we've seen in many departments a real lack of leadership at all levels.
And the issue of these very, very generous tax breaks to the private sector, Matthew, where are we in terms of sort of rejigging how we do that?
It's a difficult one. It's difficult. I think for us, the biggest thing around the tax front is just to assess what is the value of some of these taxes. Yes, they have given significant tax incentives, holidays, etc., to many companies. We're not always seeing the value of that because that is meant to be in exchange for creating jobs. I think there is a need to really reflect on it. Are we getting our money's worth? Could you look at providing incentives other ways? But what we've also seen, ironically, at the same time over the past few years, is increasing the tax burden upon workers in the middle class through increasing the VAT, increasing electricity and municipal tariffs, reducing the tax brackets, relief for inflation, etc., which is ironic. But I think for us, the biggest thing around tax collection is on capacitating SARS. SARS are deliberately decapacitated in the era of state capture for obvious reasons. We've seen some good positive turnarounds beginning to happen under the new leadership of SARS, but if you can invest more as government into SARS, it can enable it to tackle tax evasion by the rich, by the wealthy who know how to gig the system, and equally critically, to crack down on customs evasions. Only about 5% of our goods coming through our borders are inspected for customs duties. So that robs government billions of rands due to it to enable it to fund the economy, etc. It also threatens local manufacturing industries and jobs. So really for us, the biggest way to deal with the tax issue is on tax evasion, and it's also tackling customs evasion.
Yeah, absolutely. The discussion around our unemployment figures is so incredibly broad. Matthew Parks, thanks very much for helping us understand some of those big issues. He is Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, and it's on the back of Stats SA, due to release the unemployment figures today. That's for the second quarter of the year. 32.6% were those first quarter numbers. Of course, under the expanded definition of unemployment, that number is much, much higher, at above 40%. So it'd be interesting to see where those numbers come in today.